The merfolk of Ixalan have found themselves consolidated in the Explorers of the Deep Precon. The way this hyper-budget upgrade works is 10 cards in, 10 cards out, all for less than $10. This will be targeted to Hawkball as the commander, whose soul is surging so hard right now. The Deep-Root Pilgrimage is where we'll start our journey. It's the only Lost Caverns of Ixalan spell included in this package. It's a 2-drop that will create a 1/1 merfolk creature token that is hexproof when one or more merfolk you control become tapped. Combat is going to be the classic route to start generating these creatures. I mean, turn 1 Benthic Biomancer and swinging turn 2 after playing Deep-Root Pilgrimage feels pretty great. But combat isn't the only way to get your merfolk tapped. Kiora's Follower can tap itself to untap a target permanent. That'll make a token. If that permanent you untapped was Merfolk Sovereign that had already been tapped to make a merfolk unblockable, it would have been your second token. But when you tap her again to make another merfolk unblockable, you're looking at 3 new merfolk on board. This spell is going for $2.18. More merfolk is better because your commander, Hawkball, will have every single one of them, token or not, explore at the beginning of combat on your turn. That means more lands in hand or +1/+1 counters, and ideally the perfect spell to draw on top of your library. Speaking of lands in hand, there's going to be times you put 2 or 5 lands in your hand when you start exploring with all your merfolk at the beginning of combat. It just so happens that Hawkball has a built-in way to manage the flood by letting you put a land from your hand onto the battlefield when he attacks. If you choose not to, you can draw that hopefully perfect spell on top of your library. But back to the lands again. I've included a couple more ways to make better use of them than having them flaccidly sitting in your hand. Nostalgic Dreams will let you discard X number of cards from your hand as an additional cost to essentially replace them with X number of cards from your graveyard. Someone may have rightfully destroyed your Herald of Secret Streams or Simic Ascendancy. Conversely, your opponent may need another round of removal from Beast Within and Rapid Hybridization. Nostalgic Dreams can turn those flaccid explored lands or other cards you don't need in the moment into these super impactful spells ready to be cast. You can pick this one up for $1.63. I mentioned a couple of removal spells that have been reprinted for this precon, but I'm bringing another one in that will help manage your opponent's boards and make use of your lands in hand. Broken Bond is 1 and a green, will destroy a target artifact or enchantment, and let you put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. There will be times a Phyrexian Altar or Rhystic Study needs to go, and this spell will help you be ready for that eventuality. Broken Bond is only 24 cents. Alright, one more spell that does land things. Harvest Season. This is a 2 and a green sorcery that aligns with the overarching strategy of the deck, which is pumping out merfolk, making them big with counters and turning them sideways. This spell will let you search your library for X number of basic lands, where X is the number of tapped creatures you control, to put them onto the battlefield. Tapped, but still, after casting this, your mana's gonna be in a good spot for the foreseeable future. Aquatech's Will is the final sorcery in this upgrade and was made specifically for the merfolk. It's a single blue cantrip, if you control a merfolk, which is, very likely given the circumstances. Having the card replace itself feels great, and the other effect will put a flood counter on a target land an opponent controls, turning it into an island in addition to its other types. This will unlock Island Walk on a player that isn't in blue, which is a very strong mechanic that merfolk lean pretty hard into to get their damage through. If there are multiple non-blue players at the table, that nostalgic dreams bringing this spell back is going to come up huge in enabling your merfolk attack squad. Also, it being a merfolk tribal sorcery will let the Deeproot Historian retrace the spell, letting you cast it from your graveyard. Aquatech's Will is only 30 cents. Forerunner of the Herald is our first creature. This is one of 3 merfolk tutors, the others being Marrow Harbinger and Sea Hunter. This is the cheapest option at 29 cents, but also plays nicely with the counter theme present in this precon. The second ability will have it start collecting those +1/+1 counters whenever another merfolk enters the battlefield. With over 30 merfolk creatures, the addition of Deeproot Pilgrimage, and the already included Deeproot Waters, this creature can get big and fast. Kami of the Whispered Hopes is not a merfolk, but is an incredible value add for the counter theme. When you explore, you get that land in hand, or 1 +1/+1 counter on a target creature. It kind of goes without saying, but doubling that amount every time with this Kami on the battlefield is going to accelerate your game and start punishing your opponent's life totals. It also taps for any color mana, so if you need a little fixing, it's got that covered too. This creature is $1.03. Tempest Caller is the final creature and is something of a finisher if you're not able to find any of your mass evasion creatures. When it enters the battlefield, it straight up taps every creature an opponent controls. If you're down to a one-on-one scenario, this is probably going to get you the W. If it's in your hand before then, it's still a pretty nice political bargaining chip to potentially knock out a player without worry of a crackback from the others at the table. In conjunction with this newly printed creature, Singer of Swift Rivers, that gives flash to all of your merfolk, you can enable another player to land a lethal blow. This is going to make for some fun interactions, and is only 31 cents. Flooded Grove and Yavimaya Coast are the last 2 additions, and are flat improvements to the mana base, coming in untapped and able to tap for both of your colors. The average mana value of the deck went from 3.11 to 2.87 with this upgrade, so it wants you to be faster, and your lands coming in untapped will help you do just that. For these lands, you're looking at $1.59 and 55 cents respectively. In order to add, we must cut. So let's go over those before we review some of the best reprints and coolest new cards printed. The lands we are replacing are Llanowar Reborn and Temple of the False God. Llanowar Reborn comes in tapped, only taps for a green, and the upside is a single +1/+1 counter on a creature. With the amount of counters this deck will be generating, you're not going to miss that single one. Temple of the False God just isn't a land until you have 5 or more, and at the pace this deck wants to play, I don't want any part of that. Bygone Marbles is a new spell created for this precon with the new Descend mechanic, but I think it misses the mark in this deck. You get either 1 or 3 permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand when you cast this, depending on if you have 8 or more permanents in your graveyard. There are some really strong, non-permanent spells you're missing out on getting back, and it feels bad to cast if you don't meet that Descend threshold, which isn't going to come as reliably in this deck like it might in a self-mill deck. The 2 instants are Ruinous Intrusion and Commit Memory. 4 mana invested to destroy a single artifact or enchantment is a lot. And let's face it, for every 1 time you blow up a portal to Phyrexia and cash in on those 9 +1/+1 counters, you're probably blowing up 10 things like Propaganda or Ashnod's Altar, where that back-end reward isn't worth the mana cost. Both sides of commit memory cost a little too much for my blood, especially since this deck can make use of the graveyard, has good card draw, and doesn't get value out of draw 7s like other decks might. Merfolk Mistbinder has a Lord ability, but without anything else and all the +1/+1 counters flying around, it's not doing enough. Varel of the Hallclade is a decent mana sink, doubling counters, but is kinda awkward. It's got good toughness to do blocking, but her ability in response to your opponents declaring blockers is where I think she stands out, which is what you may call anti-synergistic. She'll find a better home with the 13th Doctor. Zagana, Utopian Speaker, and Prime Speaker Zagana are both out. A conditional, though reliable ETB draw a card is fine. The adaptability is not relevant, and the trampling is good since most of your creatures will be modified, but this deck has alternative ways to get combat damage through to players. The Prime Speaker is expensive, first and foremost, but still has plenty of stuff I like to see on a card. That said, this creature and Tishana, Voice of Thunder, are super comparable, and I don't feel like the deck needs both. If you want consistency, you should go with the Prime Speaker. You'll likely end up with at least a 4/4 draw 4 in most games, which is great. But if you're a gambler like me, the upside of a possible 11/11 draw 8 with no hand size is too good to pass up. The last cut is Zolotoyak, the Smiling Flood. This is a very handsome salamander, and I'll keep his smile in my heart for all of time, but it's not a merfolk. It costs 6 mana, and Aquatech's Will is helping to get those flood counters instead. I will say, if you want to keep this guy in the deck, consider keeping Varel as well for double the doubling. Alright, time to switch gears to the best reprints, and let's just bang them out. Branching Evolution makes +1/+1 counters go burr. Another reprint, Hardened Scales, gives you an additional counter, just like the Kami did. Branching Evolution flat out doubles the counters. Metallic Mimic can assume a creature type when entering the battlefield, and then hands out +1/+1 counters when creatures of that chosen type join the party. Kindred Discovery is a staple blue tribal card and a welcome reprint. You name a creature type, and whenever one ETBs or attacks, you draw a card. Thassa, God of the Sea, can make any creature you control unblockable, can scry to get you your best draws, and is an indestructible 5/5 for 3 mana. Finally, there's Kumena, Tyrant of Oraska. She can take full advantage of a board full of merfolk by letting your creatures become unblockable, drawing you cards, or getting you counters. At only 3 mana, this is one tough SOB that makes the addition of the Deeproot Pilgrimage all the more potent. Mist Dancer is the first of 3 newly printed cards I want to spotlight. It's a sizable 5 mana, but gives all your merfolk +1 power, and more importantly, flying. It's not totally unheard of to see flying merfolk, but an army of them is going to catch people off guard and pose an imminent threat. If the dancer is destroyed, she can come back for an encore to help close out your games. I flashed these 2 earlier in the video, but these are super good in this deck and any deck where counters matter. The sorcery, Wave Goodbye, wipes the board of every creature without a +1/+1 counter by returning them to their owner's hand. In most cases, the bulk of your creatures are going to be safe. There may even be an opponent that isn't very affected by this, but more often than not, you can expect to lay down some serious pain. The last spell is the instant, Ripples of Potential. If you find yourself on the wrong side of a board wipe, this spell will not only save all your permanents with counters by phasing them out, it will also let you proliferate just before that to make them return stronger than ever. That's the video, folks. Thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave me a comment below about how angry you are that the pirates stole Thassa's Bident so we couldn't have it in this deck. Alright, I'll catch you later for some more monkeying around.